You're listening to Advice from Your Advocates, a show where we provide elder law advice to professionals who work with the elderly and their families.
Welcome back to Advice from Your Advocates. I'm Bob Mannor. I'm a certified elder law attorney in Michigan, and I'm very excited about our guest today. It's a very interesting topic. We've got Neal Shah, who's CEO and co-founder of CareYaya. Neal, welcome.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I want to get right into talking about CareYaya.
Sure. So, I'm the CEO and co-founder of CareYaya. We run a care marketplace connecting over 25,000 college students to care for older adults in their community. All the students are pre-health career, aspirational doctors, nurses, physical therapists of tomorrow, and they're doing care as a way to earn some income on the side, as well as a way to help people in their community and get valuable care experiences towards future clinical careers. Many people around the country call us Care for America, similar to Teach for America, where we're inspiring young people to step up and solve a unmet need in society. And in this case, the unmet need is there's a massive shortage of caregivers who are able to help people. And our population is only aging, so we need more help. So that's kind of CareYaya in a nutshell.
So the people that interact with this CareYaya platform are going to be the students and then also the public that needs to find caregivers, or how does that work?
Yeah. So the way the CareYaya platform works is it's similar to Uber in terms of if you or a loved one need care for an aging parent or a spouse, then you go onto the platform, typically through a website, web app, anywhere you have internet access, and you can go on, set up a profile, mention the care you need help with, and then select days and times, and then we'll onboard you. And then that care opportunity will be available to students in your areas. You guys are all over Michigan, and our first Michigan market was University of Michigan, kind of broader Ann Arbor area. But we are expanding to other cities across Detroit Metro, as well as the western part of the state. And any family can go to the site, book care, be onboarded, and then have students nearby ready to help them. One of the key unique features is it's all booking and matching and scheduling online. And as a result of that, the cost is much lower. A traditional local elder care agency might charge $30, $35, $40 an hour. And they typically, the business model would be paying the caregiver half. In our case, we charge nothing for the service. We're completely angel funded and grant funded. And then you book and use everything through our online tools to find students near you. And then you just pay the student directly. So in most markets, the care is available at $17 to $20 an hour. So it's highly affordable. And I would say final thing would be caregiver quality. In the traditional care industry, you might pay $35 an hour, but because the company is turning around and paying less than half to the person doing the care, they typically will attract, less educated people who are doing this as a full-time career. And you can't blame them, but it's just like, it's low wage work that many times people burn out of and don't want to do. And in this case, you'd get a University of Michigan pre-medical student, to kind of come help you at half the rate as traditional care market. So it's like really awesome it's expanding access to affordable care for many families who can't afford the traditional agency-based care. For people who are relying on themselves to find caregivers, this is like a do-it-for-me option. And for people who don't kind of have the time or the ability to go recruit students at great universities nearby, this does it for them. So, it's a very convenient solution.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I want to get more into the process there because that sounded quite interesting. So a family that's looking for a caregiver, and this could be an ongoing relationship, right? It could end up being where you set it up and it'll go on for the next 6 months for 2 days a week or something like that. And it could also mean that student's moving on or something and they'd have to find a different student. But it is an ongoing, it's not like just a one-time caregiver type of a situation.
Yes, 100%. In fact, actually, we prefer that. The students prefer that. I think everybody benefits when it's ongoing. So the power users of our platform are people who might need help 4 days a week, 5 days a week, 7 days a week. And typically, because these are students, the same student might not be available all 5 days. So a care team develops. So that's kind of the best thing that we would offer is that, let's say you're somebody living in like Ann Arbor, Detroit metro area, and you're taking care of your mother. Or frankly, let's say you're somebody living in Ohio and your mother lives in, the Detroit metro area and you're worried about her remotely. Or let's say you're somebody living in Ann Arbor and your mother lives in Atlanta. I think, by the way, we're all over the country. So you would go online, book the care, book recurring care as you need. And then the days and times would be in our system. And then it would find and match students that are available. So if you had a student at a nearby university who is available on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the afternoons. They would come help you then. You get to leave reviews of them, how they did. They get to leave reviews of you. And we really prioritize long-term matching and relationship building. Right. So we are able to offer care 5 days a week and 7 days a week, but we also have people using it a couple of days a week as needed. And some people are wanting different people to come by. You know, they're very specific about just the days and times. And some people are like, oh, I really like these 3 students that I met, and I want to have them as part of our care team. So it's pretty flexible, and people can use it, however they want to.
So tell me more about the payment process. So they're not paying through the consumer, the family is not paying through the website. They're paying the person directly. Is that what I heard?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And we set it up that way. In our early days, we've now been around for almost 3 years. In our early days, we were processing the payment through our site, but we found that the payment processing companies were taking 4 or 5% of that cut. Mm-hmm. And we were just like, well, we don't need to make money ourselves. So we're like, why are all these families just wasting the money? So we switched it to person because it's free. So most people, I would say, use Venmo. Venmo P2P is free, so there's no fees. And then people are also able to do cash or check or other methods like Zelle as they want. But we found person-to-person methods are, you can get around a transaction fee. And then most families, it's beneficial for them. And then students, it's like, okay, it's just like they receive the income instead of kind of a middleman taking it out. So it's going to be for everyone.
I believe there's a lot of skeptical people in the world, so I'd like to get into the details. So, the old saying, follow the money. So when we follow the money, I think I heard, and I want to kind of clarify this, that CareYaya is funded by some angel investors, right?
Yes.
And that is there profit being made by CareYaya? Where do they get figured into the financial arrangement?
Yeah, great question. So currently, no profit being made. I think we hope at some point we can make it sustainable, but initial funding, and I can tell you, as you kind of get into the interview, my own personal story, but initially it was just funding it myself. I was bootstrapping it because I had a previously successful career in finance, and I actually had become a caregiver in my mid-30s, and I saw how broken the home care market was. So initially it was just kind of like a passion project. So I was like, okay, what can I fund? Build some technology and deliver something cool that can help a lot of people, and then just go off and do something else and make it kind of just like survive on its own. As that movement grew, we were attracted, we attracted a bunch of retired healthcare executives. So retired doctors, chiefs of large departments at hospitals, healthcare executives who came up and said, hey, I'll just put some of my, retirement money with you guys because I want you to hire a team of people and really scale it. So we started scaling. But thankfully, when you kind of find very social mission aligned investors like that, they were basically like quasi-funding a nonprofit where they were just like, I want you to do something good. And if it ever becomes sustainable, great, I'll earn a return on it. But I don't really care about the return part. I care about like doing the right thing. And then the decision making from us and them was, in order to attract very talented young people who don't have a lot of savings, they would rather work for a technology startup. You can't find the best software developer at University of Michigan is not going to join a nonprofit, So we're like, okay, let's make it a technology startup, stay true to the social mission and not monetize off families or take money from caregivers' pockets. So we did that. And then after that got going, after the second year of us being around, we started getting a lot of grants. So there is a tremendous amount of money at the National Institute on Aging that is then also through partnerships with universities being kind of like given out to innovation companies that are making an impact on advancing care for the older adult population. So pleased to say we've won a grant from Johns Hopkins, one from National Institute on Aging, and also a grant from Atrium Health, which is one of the largest hospital systems in the country. So through this combination of funding, we're able to kind of keep not only sustaining, but even rapidly growing the service. And then, of course, I think at some point, we'll have to make a decision on, is there a indefinite amount of National Institute on Aging funding, which I believe there is because it keeps growing every year, or will we have to pivot to find social impact investors? I do believe if we can pull it off, the vision and the mission is free to consumer forever, and then find another way to make it sustainable. And I believe a lot of the tailwinds are in our favor. Medicare is starting to do innovation programs, starting to pay for in-home care. And, we're talking to a couple of large hospitals about partnering with them on the dementia guide program. And, if we get that partnership, the rate that Medicare is set would be nicely profitable for us, which would be awesome because you can make it sustain on that and then run a free consumer business, through this. There are a lot of workforce development programs reaching out to us, wanting to train and upskill the students even further to prepare them for future healthcare careers. So that could be kind of a monetization opportunity. So I think it's a little bit harder in the early days to do it this way, but I think longer term, you can build a more elegant product similar to let's say Google, everybody gets Google search for free, but then they're kind of monetizing through advertising. That's one way of doing it. But if you had to pay each time for a Google search, the cost would add up because they're spending 5-6 cents every time somebody's searching. But it's like just a great public benefit. So I think in this case, our expenses, we are able to keep low enough, but it would be nice if like indefinitely through grant funding and through other partnerships with Medicare, you're able to keep the basic consumer care matching platform free forever, because then that just delivers logically the most affordable cost of care. And critically, it allows the caregiver to walk away with 100% of what the family's paying. And I believe that that it's a small thing, but in the psychology of the caregiving experience, it makes a huge impact in the positive attitude that both people feel towards it. And frankly, the negative attitude that people feel in the traditional care industry when they fork over $35 and then the person, the caregiver doing 99% of the work gets less than half. Both sides are sour in that transaction. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's an important conversation that you just had, because I think people want to have a good understanding of how this all works, and is their caregiver getting paid enough, to attract the right good caregivers, things like that. And the conversation that you really made it clear for everybody is this is bigger than just that transaction. This is a mission. This is a bigger picture, and you're really looking through the length of it, the long view of this. And I think that's going to be very important for the listeners to know. This isn't just something that is, a small option, or that you're looking to really grow this, and you've set everything up in the way that this will be a long-term solution.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that, as we set out, like the mission was to revolutionize caregiving. I kind of dealt with the problem firsthand. I had to leave behind my career, to do it full time. And I think to me, it was just obvious that there is a huge unmet need. Over 50 million Americans are caring for a family member that's aging, that's living with serious illness, that's nearing end of life, or that's living with a major long-term disability. And that's 1 in 6 people. And the care market is not designed for them. The care market is designed for like the top 1%, if that. And moreover, even if you're in the top 1% and you have unlimited means, the user experience in the care market sucks all around, because of the structure of the industry, because it's this kind of national franchise or local franchisee industry, because they're profit maximizing for small geographic markets, because there's this antiquated 1980s and 1990s business model that results in very high prices and very little, less than half, being passed down to the underlying care worker. You have this break in the entire system, the tremendous amount of money that's wasted on sales and marketing, advertising, buying Facebook ads, Google ads, newspaper ads. I mean, it's just ridiculously inefficient economic structure that then results in like a poor customer experience and a poor experience for the caregiver too. So then everybody's complaining about caregiver shortages. And I'm like, well, there aren't logical caregiver shortages. There's caregiver shortages because the current industry sucks. Like if you developed a different system, there would be not unlimited, but there would be a lot more people caregiving. Like single-handedly, like a team of 5 of us, at this relatively earlier stage startup has gotten 25,000 new caregivers across America into the system. That's great. Talk about what caregiver shortages, I'm not seeing any. Yeah.
Well, and it is interesting. And we're seeing it across several industries, and even not just home caregiving, but caregiving facilities, assisted living, nursing homes in particular are arguing or saying that there's a shortage, that they can't fill the positions that they want. And, on one hand, I very much appreciate the revolutionary approach that you have, and this is a great way to start to look at solutions. Criticize so much the old way either, because that is the way. I mean, that's the way most people, if they're going to get into this business. And around our area, we have a number of home giving companies that were just started by families, and of course, there's a lot of franchises too. But the idea is you really have a big picture idea, and so the other ones are still going to be around. Maybe they'll find ways to innovate and things like that. I agree with you that the system isn't great for that, but it is the system. So I can't criticize them for being part of the system that exists. Exactly. I also like the idea of moving towards a better system and finding this innovation, and that's what you're providing. You're really rethinking the whole model that's around home caregiving.
No, 100% agree. And you're 100% right. I mean, every individual that I've met a lot of home care agency owner operators, and they are all kind-hearted, mission-driven people. 95+% of them, something happened to them, like what happened to me, and they left behind another career to take care of someone. And then after that, they were drawn by the mission, or many would call it a calling. I certainly would. If like, okay, things happen in my life for a reason that are very painful, very traumatic, but you kind of reframe it as like, okay, maybe this is my calling and I found it midway through my life. So I think most of the people I've met are like very well-intentioned people. And the ones that go into the franchise system, it's the system wins, that they don't win, they can't do it their way. And the ones that are doing it independently, I mean, God bless them, because I think they have a lot of leeway to do it a different way and experiment and test different business models. And I think many of them will end up, designing things that are more unique and more kind of like user-friendly. But I think the franchise part of the system constrains the individual's creative ability and ability to kind of solve the needs on the ground. And then they just kind of have to execute against what the franchise says. And I think that to me, that limits the innovation that should be happening on the ground.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wanted to get into how you came to this, because this is more than just a job for you. Obviously, you've given up other work, and this is really a mission for you. So what brought you to this, and what is your background?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So my background prior to this, I'm in my early 40s right now. And from my early 20s until my mid 30s, I was living in New York City. I was working in the finance industry. I started my career in investment banking at a large bank, Credit Suisse. And then I very quickly went into the hedge fund industry, where I was managing investments across a series of sectors, including healthcare, technology, and others. I rose up the ladder very quickly due to good investments and high returns, and became a partner in my late 20s at a multi-billion-dollar fund where I was running an entire portfolio. And then by my early 30s, one of those investors backed me to start my own fund. So when I was 31, I started my own investment fund with 10 million. And by the time I was 35, I grew that to 250 million, had university endowments and large charitable foundations investing with me. And I was investing in more like kind of like mid-stage and mature companies across, kind of multiple industries, but healthcare was a decent focus. Had nothing happened to me, I would have just stayed on that track. I was good at it. I liked doing it. But I would say in hindsight, there was not much of a mission or calling. It was just kind of, I was analytically good at thinking about businesses and seeing trends in the economy. However, fortunately or unfortunately, I became a caregiver. I first secondhand saw the experience when my grandfather aged and then became severely ill and had a series of difficulties, from cognitive decline to kidney failure to cancer, and then to end of life. And, I'm the person in my family that everybody relies on for research and advice. So while my mom bore the brunt of the direct care work, I navigated the entire kind of care ecosystem, including both healthcare, clinical care, as well as like home-based. And I kind of realized like one of the big insights I had from that experience was, 95% of kind of the care work is outside of the healthcare system that the family ends up having to deal with. Right. And that's the harder part, where there aren't a lot of resources. So, in my mom's case, at that time, she was in her mid 50s and she had a career, and she had to leave her career to manage the care, because like the care we were getting was not good enough. And, she felt like, hey, this is my duty. And, we all thought it was going to be like temporary, et cetera. And what was supposed to be a few months turned into several years. And then she was never able to go back to the workforce. And I kind of realized like that to me was like an aha that, okay, if this industry cannot support families when they're going through this difficult time, you're going to have a lot of people burning out of the workforce, losing a significant sense of their identity, dealing with a lot of stuff without getting help. And it's going to leave lasting damage. So at that time, I was still running my fund, and I became kind of like obsessed with like the care economy and why isn't there more innovation happening? And, then unfortunately, at the peak of my fund, my wife became severely ill. And went through years of serious illness, cancer, multiple hospitalizations, and failed therapies. And I became her primary caregiver. And it was like a very, very difficult experience, because I also firsthand dealt with, you can't get good care help. You end up doing it yourself. I ended up taking a bunch of sabbaticals for my work, which at that point just became kind of like, after a while, it became untenable. We kind of like were flying all over the country to get treatment, including significantly at Michigan Medicine. And yeah, then I just had to basically shut down my fund and become a full-time caregiver, which was like very, very difficult. But, it was like eye-opening, in terms of like, and inspiring in terms of like, hey, there's so many people. I think my biggest positive learning from an otherwise very negative and painful experience was that meeting so many people through caregiver support groups, cancer support groups, just like all the time spent in hospitals, all the time spent in, all the other treatments, and just kind of like seeing how many people are going through this, without the support that they need. And, the burden that it places on the family caregiver. I think I learned things and experienced things myself that I would have never guessed before. But 1 in 4 family caregivers gets their own health issue because of the stress of caregiving. 1 in 3 family caregivers gets their own mental health issue. So both physical and mental health, it becomes extremely taxing. And I think that they're the ignored part of, kind of the experience, because the person with the issue is what the entire medical system's focusing on. but what about the person taking care of that person? So yeah, I thought that it was like really eye-opening. And after that point, I kind of like walked away from my fund, and I was kind of like thinking, okay, and thank God, knock on wood, I didn't finish the story, but my wife ultimately had a successful outcome and has now been in remission for a few years. Even more miraculously, we had our first child after the whole experience. So we have a happy, healthy 3-year-old daughter, which, they said was statistically impossible. So really thankful for that. And then after that, I was just like, I could either just go back to my finance career, but I'd kind of like lost meaning in that. And then I'd gained a new meaning of like, hey, there's something here that needs to be fixed. I have like skills and background and like a passion and interest in this. So, why not just try to fix this? So that was kind of the journey. And in the early days of starting out, I thought I was going to do something for a couple of years, make an impact, and then kind of go back to what I knew how to do. But seeing the growing impact and seeing the positive feedback from the families we're helping, I think has gotten me like way more excited that, wow, there's like something here that could make a huge like impact around the country. So yeah, now I'm like all in.
That's great. Now, where were your first, so you kind of center around universities and things like that, where were your first entries into it? I know that you're in Ann Arbor and Detroit. Where did you start out?
So I'm based in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, and our first entries were in our backyard at Duke University and UNC Chapel Hill. So we started there, and in the first year we went from like a couple dozen students to like 100 students to eventually 500 students to eventually we got to over 1,000 students just at these two schools. And then we were like, oh wow, that's kind of cool. Like there's like way more people that are interested in doing this than I would have expected. Then we expanded to some other universities just in our area, kind of like across the South, to South Carolina, College of Charleston, Emory University in Atlanta. So we ended up getting like 5,000 students on. And then I'd say at some point in the last, I'd say 9 months or so, it kind of like went viral around the country. Then it rapidly expanded to Boston, so we ended up at Harvard, Tufts, Northeastern, Boston University. There's like 7 different universities in the Boston area. We ended up going all over Florida and Texas at several very large schools. University of Michigan, of course, and of course the rival Ohio State. These like big universities have like large healthcare focused populations, and it was awesome.
Right.
And, the students were telling each other, and really the professors were telling each other. A lot of these universities have what's called pre-health career advising. Anyone who wants to become a doctor, become a nurse, become a physician assistant, the undergraduate university departments will advise them on like what else you can do to improve your career path and opportunities. And I think the career advisors loved the CareYaya platform because they were like, this is a great way for students to get paid experience at flexible hours. They don't have to wait till summer. They don't have to wait till after graduation to get this experience. So we started really partnering with a lot of these departments, and I had several presentations with the University of Michigan Career Advising, and then they started kind of endorsing and recommending the service. So yeah, now, and then we're also expanding to the West Coast. We're at Stanford, Berkeley, UCLA, a bunch of universities across California. So yeah, now we have over 25,000 students on it, and it's growing very fast. I think we found an interesting statistic across America is that there's 20 million college students, of which something like 18% of them or so want to go into healthcare professions. So let's just use a round number, around 4 million. And CareYaya is getting 20 to 25% market share of those at most universities when they expand. So if we can get this right at a grand scale level, you could have up to 1 million students on this. So that's kind of like cool to think, because most of these people are not in the care economy otherwise. At a time when there's huge workforce shortages, to have some way of getting 1 million new people into the care workforce, even if it's going to be temporary, for a few years. And I would say some of the best people in the workforce, these are people who are going to be future doctors and nurses. That would be just, I think, a home run for society.
Well, and there's the other side of it too, which I think is really important, that if there's criticism of the healthcare industry, that it can be very impersonal, and that that sometimes the people feel that the doctors really kind of lost touch with the patients in some cases. And so what a great opportunity to have these future, doctors, nurses, physicians assistants that have that home caregiving experience, which is the most personal, the most intimate type of care, and that they probably wouldn't go through the traditional industry. They're not going to be able to commit to the same hours or the same requirements of that traditional industry. And having that experience, that human experience before they get to the next stage in their career, I think that's just amazing, and really is encouraging of the idea that there's so many people, so many students that are excited about this.
Yeah, great point, Bob. I mean, thanks for, highlighting that. We just had this wonderful young man, Josh, who got into med school and he's on his way to becoming an orthopedic surgeon. And, he literally wrote his essays about the care that he provided for a family where the gentleman was living with Parkinson's. And it was interesting because the guy did everything. He did rounds at the hospital, as a nurse aide and all that stuff. But, kind of his observation was in a lot of the clinical work, you're in and out, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, change the IV, do this, do this, do this. But you don't really get to know the people. And when you take care of the same man living with Parkinson's for 6 months and you're visiting him twice a week and you're seeing all the stuff his wife's dealing with, you're seeing his condition progress over time. You're seeing kind of like the emotional toll as well as the physical toll. And you're seeing like the moments of happiness and developing a long-term relationship. It's like that shines. And I think that develops like an amazing bedside manner. And for many of the students, it's like, they are so stressed with like, I got to hit all the biology classes, get the grades, take my standardized tests, go do rounds at the hospital. This is like the fun, positive thing where like, one of the students at Tufts wrote an essay in her school paper about this, that I was about to burn out of my clinical career journey because it's so stressful and it's so impersonal, that then taking care of a older lady in her community in Boston through CareYaya reminded her of like, this is actually why I want to go become a doctor. If like I have 5 years ahead of me of all this stress, but ultimately I want to make an impact like this. So I think that a lot of times, like as medicine becomes like overly complex, I think you lose that human touch. And I think that kind of results in like people not want to do it anymore. So I think, yeah, something like this is like great to encourage people to stick with it.
So for the caregivers that use your platform, do they have to be a student? They have to be associated with one of the schools that you work with?
Yeah, great question. For now, yes. For now, I think we want to go for like, it's a high quality workforce that the traditional care industry doesn't want, so I don't want to like kind of create, it's not a zero sum game. I don't want to compete, and I think most care agencies are looking for people who can do full-time care work. So we're like, hey, look, these students can't. So we can bring them into the workforce. We also find it's very high quality and vetted for the families, that we run background checks on all the students. We interview all the students, but it's nice to have the assurance that the university has also checked them and the university they are currently enrolled, because we find that creates a second incentive of both a carrot and a stick in terms of your professor knows you're on it, your pre-health advisor knows you're on it, and your friends are on it. So multiple disincentives for any kind of bad behavior combined with multiple positive incentives for good behavior. That if you're at University of Michigan and you do a good job on this, you do X amount of hours, you might get glass credit, because we like strike relationships with these departments, and we get you like 3 credit hours for doing X amount of caregiving. Then if you do a good job on this, we will give you an official download of your hours and a letter of recommendation. I personally have written so many letters of recommendation to people for physician assistant school, med school, nurse practitioner school, etc. So for the student, it almost becomes like so many reasons to do a good job, which then I think feeds back into the care quality for the family. So for now, yes, we're operating in a very constrained way like that. I think over time, I could see openness to expanding to community colleges and potentially even expanding to other people in the community. But I think for now, want to go with like quality first. And it just seems like a great way to have like a very, very high quality. I would be confident enough to say right now, like now I've been running it for a while, like I would not only use this to get care for one of my loved ones, like if my family members, like my mom's going through some health difficulties right now, I would be happy to do it. But we've gotten the quality down so well and the name on campus is down so well that even if we got somebody that we didn't do any of the checks on, I still would be comfortable just because of how many inherent checks there are in kind of the name and the system, which I think is like kind of cool. And I wouldn't say that about the traditional care industry. So I think it's a good way to keep a high quality product.
Well, I definitely think that we'll be using this platform. So we do, as part of our law firm, what we call care navigation. So what we found was traditional lawyers that get involved in this help find, some financing, help set up things legally so that they might be able to qualify for government benefits like veterans benefits and, maximize Medicare and Medicaid, things like that.
Yeah.
But what we found was that's really only a very small portion of what the family's dealing with, kind of as you described it earlier. And so we've started this care navigation where we do care advocacy, but also helping people find the care, helping them set it up properly. And we're definitely going to be interacting with the CareYaya platform because it just sounds fantastic and you are in our area. So we will be connecting our clients through that and through our care navigation program. I know one of the things that we had discussed before we got on the podcast live is that you've been incorporating some artificial intelligence, and I'd be interested in hearing more about that and how the platform uses some AI.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thanks. So there's some, like I'd say, there's two components of the AI that we've been incorporating. One is kind of the boring behind the scenes stuff that people don't see, but that really improves the care quality. And then there's the in front of the scene that people see. So I'll start with kind of like the boring first. So the boring is on the back end of, we have so much data of, we've now had, tens of thousands of care sessions. Each session has details on what happened in the session. The student uploads that and reviews from 0 to 5 stars the family. The family reviews 0 to 5 stars the student. Pleased to say we're actually averaging like 4.87 out of 5 stars. So it's like very high. But we get a lot of data on like which people were better fits, what was happening at the session, who can do what. So as that develops, we're basically training the AI to become more predictive. That when a new family comes in and somebody books and says, my mom is like this, and this, and she likes to do this and doesn't like to do this, we now have a better prediction model of, okay, which of the students is likely to make a better fit based on who's made better fits for people like that in the past. So I think that's been like a cool use of AI. Similarly, with onboarding students, like we use our qualitative judgment between, beyond the background checks and verifying enrollment, we kind of see how people are answering questions and look for non-monetary motivations to do the caregiving. But nonetheless, we now have so much data on not just who's onboarded, but how they've subsequently done and been rated in the care session. So now we can kind of like dynamically use that to supplement our own onboarding to predict who's likely to onboard and become a good caregiver. Then you kind of get around, okay, somebody's just saying positive things on the interview, but then, how are they going to be reliability wise and quality wise? So a lot of the AI is being used to kind of power the care. So that's pretty cool. And also that just kind of keeps costs like very streamlined and keeps quality improved. So I think that's awesome. On the front end, there's a lot of AI that we're launching to help people. We've iterated and launched a bunch of these prototype projects, including life story capture. A lot of people want to do legacy projects. So while you got students there with the older adult, people want to get their stories out, talk about their childhood, talk about their middle age, talk about different fun things they used to do in their life. And we've built AI to help prompt questions, record, and then really the dream on that would be to create kind of like a digital autobiography combined with like a physical autobiography of people. And that stuff is so much easier to do with AI. We've launched a bunch of health innovation projects that we're like right now waiting for approval on from National Institute on Aging to use AI to do a lot more diagnostics and early screening at home. So we can kind of like use voice to both screen for dementia as well as help stage dementia progression, which has been fascinating. We grant funded a project that we launched to help with loneliness and isolation, which we're happy to share with you and your listeners if you guys would like to try it out. But this is for people when we are caregiving, we know there's gaps because families can't afford care all the time. So sometimes certain days a week, there isn't a caregiver there. So we built a AI through our side can call landlines or cell phones and have full conversation with people. So we noticed, like, for example, there's older lady in Ohio whose husband passed away a year ago, and her son and daughter are booking care for her a couple days a week, but then the rest of the time she's by herself and she's lonely, and they know she's isolated and depressed. So she often has dinner by herself, and she used to love having a conversation. She's like a very talkative person. So they started having Frank, what the persona we set up, call her and just like check in on her and have full conversation with her. And this is something where if you kind of had to like staff somebody to do, it would end up costing a lot of money, and it would just be so uneconomic that the family couldn't afford it. But we built something that can do this for like a few cents a call and just have like a full out half-hour conversation with her, talk about whatever, and then over time running memory. So that project got like a lot of buzz, and we're talking to a lot of like foundations about rolling that out all over the country. So yeah, there's a lot of like cool applications of AI that like you would never think about, but that can make like a huge impact. We launched this one. Sorry, last thing I'll say, this was the most fun thing. We launched a art AI tool that people with Parkinson's and more advanced dementia who can't fully draw, but who like creating art. It's like very relaxing. So we had this 89-year-old lady with Parkinson's and full tremors trying to draw her golden retriever that was her dog a long time ago and it passed. And of course, like it wouldn't come out well. But between her drawing and then the student kind of like telling the AI what she was trying to do, the AI went and backfilled, using generative art AI and created like an amazing picture. And then it was just like, she felt so great that she kind of drew it herself, even though kind of like the AI did most of it. So it's like a little, we call that art therapy. So I think, there's a lot of like cool applications for AI like that people aren't thinking about, that can just make like a huge positive impact on people. And like,
that is
and older
very
adults
cool.
love interacting with this new technology. Yeah.
We know from research that, especially with dementia, part of the brain where memory is, and sometimes ability for your brain to tell your hand what to do might not be there.
Mm-hmm.
But some of that more artistic, this is where music comes in, this is where art comes in, and things like that. And to give an outlet for someone who has that they still have that ability, they just can't actually do it anymore because their brain can't tell their hand to do it the way they used to do it.
Yeah.
But to use AI to be able to make it, to use that creative part of their brain that they still have. They might not remember specifically, what they've done in the past even, but they know, but that is still intact. You'll see this with music, with art, all of these more creative adventures. That is something that is often still intact with people with dementia. They're just not able to express that. So that's amazing to be able to allow them to express that.
Yeah, great. No, thank you. And it's so fun for us to do. Like, we have mostly like a team of like software people, and like that type of project, like we just like love doing. Like sometimes we're up till like 1 or 2 in the morning working out the kinks and just working hard to like launch this stuff into the world. But then because that as soon as somebody uses it, the impact is just going to be, you're going to bring joy and happiness to somebody who's in an otherwise very difficult situation. And I think that's like really awesome. Like I'm surprised more people aren't doing this kind of positive stuff with AI, but I feel like, the social impact to bring these tools to help this population that people aren't designing technology for, I think is awesome.
I also am actually very excited about the part that you say, you can really try to match people better with AI. And it's very difficult to do. I mean, this is one of the things when we're consulting with families, we do a lot of work with families that have a loved one with some form of dementia or Alzheimer's. And often with dementia, there are some things that they feel that it's going to be problematic bringing in a caregiver. And so if you have the technology to see how this particular caregiver or a range of caregivers, how they've interacted on certain issues or how they've been able to, frankly, just even dealing with somebody with memory issues that repeats themselves a lot, that's not always easy for everybody. And so when you can match people that are more patient or that can talk about, well, we have one of the clients that I often will talk about that he was showing some agitative behaviors. And one of the things that we eventually figured out and was able to really make that go away was he liked to watch and talk about old Western movies, old cowboy. That's something that, AI can figure that kind of stuff out a lot faster.
Yes.
The right people to the right people. I think that's an amazing use of the technology and could be very helpful in really helping people on a very personal level if we can match the right caregivers to the right people who need care. So.
No, thanks, Bob. And that's actually a great example that you pointed out. I think it's exactly like, I think that AI, I think sometimes the industry has these buzzwords where it's like intelligence. I kind of just view it as like it's data science. You get a ton of raw data and you feed it into the thing and it figures out a pattern that, okay, the times when he was calmed down were when he was talking about Westerns. And then you kind of find, okay, through that, how can we find either which students figure that out or who might have a natural interest in being more conversational and talking about things that they don't know about. But yeah, you're right. Like, I think it's one big data science project. And I think that's a cool thing about this is like a, tech first care company that kind of like built tech and is doing everything with tech to improve the care experience is going in there and like collecting a lot of data and able to make sense of patterns in the data, I think is very cool. And I would say one thing we've been blessed with is the college student care force. These are like tech native. I'm in my 40s, so I don't want to sound like old person saying this, but like basically today's kids are like, they were born with smartphones, like they're so fast and nimble about using this stuff that I think we can design a lot of things where they can go in there and capture a lot of like data of what's going on in the care session and then use that to optimize how we do care. And I think traditionally home-based care is not like a super tech industry. So I think that's like it's a big opportunity for like innovation and improvement and better personalization of care. And I think at scale, I think, power of AI combined with like guiding people better, you can have full personalization of care. Just so much would be suited towards your own care needs and personalized that I think it would just take individual people from a staffing perspective forever to figure out stuff.
Well, Neal, I appreciate everything you do. I'm really excited about the future that you described and the expansion of this. I would recommend everybody check out their website, CareYaya.org. or Instagram.com at WeAreCareYaya. And any other thoughts that you want to leave our audience, Neal? This has just been an amazing conversation. I'm really excited about it. And I know that we're going to be interacting with this because this is just very innovative and just, I think, a great direction for caregiving to go. Any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Last thing I would say is follow me on LinkedIn. I share a lot of health tips, caregiving tips, a lot of stuff about coming up with policy federally as well as statewide and legislation. So yeah, feel free to follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Neal, Neal, middle initial K, and then last name Shah. Or also just follow our company, CareYaya, CareYaya. But yeah, between that and Instagram and all other social media, we share a lot of valuable information. Yeah, I would love to build like a community of caregivers, whether or not you even need care help. It's just awesome to like inform and educate people, because I think that caregiving with our aging population is a rising need, and there needs to be more resources to support caregivers. Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity, Bob. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Neal. If you enjoyed this podcast and found it interesting and you want to keep up to date on these types of things, remember to subscribe. You can subscribe at any podcast to Advice from Your Advocates at any place that you can listen to podcasts. You can go to our website at mannorlawgroup.com, or you can find us on YouTube. But any place that you can get podcasts, don't forget to subscribe and know then when we get other guests that are so interesting. So thanks, Neal, and we'll see everybody next time.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks for listening. To learn more, visit mannorlawgroup.com.